Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We at CrazyLabs and AppAnnie are excited to share with you this insight and data information that can help you create your next hyper-casual hit. My name is Shai. I am the head of publishing here at CrazyLabs. And today we have here Tato, the EMEA gaming lead at AppAnnie. Hey Tato.
Hey everyone, hey Shai, nice to be here. Cool. Thanks for the introduction. We're super excited to work together with CrazyLabs on this challenge. And today, basically, I'm going to be showing you some of the nice insights and deep into them and discussing them. And obviously, this is all part of you will all also get the ebook, but here we want to go slightly deeper into those insights. And with that, I would like to kick start. Just before we do that, it's the requirement we have to do this disclaimer that AppAnnie is not a financial advisor to investment companies, etc. We are a data provider. Just a few seconds here, and then we're good to move on. And I think we're good. All right. So in terms of the content and what we're going to discuss, we're going to look at the gaming trends overall in the first half of 2021 and overall in 2020 as well. Deep dive into hyper-casual side, launch strategies on hyper-casual games, what makes the successful hyper-casual games, and look at some of the UA strategies that we're also seeing. With that, gaming market, obviously, 2020 was a tremendous year, but also we see that continue into 2021. You see the gaming consumer spend, we're estimating to surpass 120 billion in 2021, and you see the trajectory in terms of the growth as well here, which is tremendous. Shai, anything that you want to add on your side of this crazy growth that we're seeing?
Yeah, of course. It doesn't come as a surprise. We see the growth in the number of players and the number of people that use phones. There's a lot of new people that don't consider themselves as gamers, but they do like to play games and have some relief moments and fun. And obviously, this comes hand to hand with this growth as well.
Yes, absolutely. And if we even compare that with all the other forms of gaming, mobile is 1.5 times than all the other gaming combined, and we're not even talking about all the other industries like entertainment, movies, etc. It completely dwarfs that. But again, that just I think speaks to the accessibility of mobile gaming. And yeah, Shai, anything you want to add here as well?
Yeah, it comes hand to hand with what we've seen in the previous slide as well. You can see the growth in mobile gaming. Obviously, there are a lot of people that join the mobile gaming with now they have new phones, and since everyone has a phone, it's something which is easy to understand why mobile gaming compared to other is booming. And I have a phone, but most people will have a phone, while not everyone will have a console or on another device. And this is why the penetration of the mobile gaming is growing so rapidly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and definitely if you look at even the spend, like we looked at consumer spend, if you look at the other side, the mobile monetization and mobile ad spend, you see also here tremendous growth. And this is basically bread and butter for hyper casual games. And for all of you who's viewing this, you're definitely in the right space to take a bit of a chunk of this revenue that you're seeing, 290 billion in 2021. And then if we go into sometimes there's a misconception that there are no longer enough downloads, or maybe it's not growing at the rate that it was growing at, or also there was a misconception that the growth in 2020 was all fueled by COVID, obviously, and the lockdown, etc. But if you look at the trajectory and if you compare the freshest data, which would be the Q2 2021, and compared to the previous years, you still see that growth of 35%. And that just proves that COVID did play part, but then you see still this crazy acceleration that's happening. And I know Shai, you want to chime in here as well on why this is happening.
Yeah, obviously, COVID has something to do with the fact that this growth is continuing to be significant. People in quarantine, and they want some relief. They want some fun moments. But as mentioned in the earlier slides here, the growth of mobile and the growth of the spend here is something that comes hand to hand with the continuous growth of the number of people that have mobile phones, and easier for them to simply download a game and start playing.
Yeah, exactly. But basically, the gamers that we have people who are never gamers who are now playing games and contributing to these numbers, and they also sticking around, as we can see here. And then just to wrap it up, this section here, you can see that even if you look at the Q2 2021, which is the freshest quarter, you can see that hyper casual is definitely dominating the top charts when it comes to downloads. 6 out of 10 games were hyper casual. If you go back to Q1, you would see 7 games out of top 10 being hyper casual, and so on. So it's always the top of the market. So definitely the right genre of gaming to be operating in. Cool. Moving on, we want to now jump into hyper casual specifically, and this is now looking at the actual subgenres of hyper casual, right? So thanks to Game IQ product, we are not only looking at hyper casual as a high level, but we're also sub-splitting that into different subgenres of hyper casual gaming, like puzzle, action, simulation, IO, music, etc. And while overall hyper-casual gaming as a genre is growing, we're also seeing that some subgenres are growing at a higher rate. And I know that this is quite important for CrazyLabs and Shai to kind of look at specific subgenres as well.
Yeah, Tato, I think this is something which is very, very interesting. And we at CrazyLabs are always trying to find what will be the next trend, and we work with our studio partners in order to find and go through ideation process of trying to find what will be the next trend. We also share this with our marketing trend report that we share with our partners as well. And I think this is something which is very critical because, when you're prototyping a hyper-casual game, you can either follow the trend or try to find the next trend. But I think looking at this slide is also something very interesting because going back to a few slides, we see the growth in mobile games, and we see the growth in hyper-casual, and we see the growth in the subgenres. Maybe 2 years ago, when we're looking at a subgenre, it might have been a niche, and today, with the growth of the number of players and the number of mobile devices and the number of players that are playing hyper-casual, this subgenre that might have been a niche back then, today might be a full subgenre on its own. And I think it's very important to follow that in order to understand how to create and prototype better games that can potentially be the next hit and the next trend as well.
No, exactly. I think it's extremely important to always keep an eye on the market and look at specific subgenres that are being successful now or growing, and then make sure that you follow those trends as well. And obviously, another important thing is looking at specific markets that are the biggest for hyper-casual gaming. And if you look at some of the biggest markets across the world in H1 2021, we can see that India being the biggest market right now in terms of downloads, US, Brazil, Russia, Indonesia, Mexico. And I know that CrazyLabs is extremely also focused on the Indian market and some of these emerging markets. So tell us some of the initiatives that you have there.
Yeah, so it doesn't come as a surprise that India is in the top here as well as the US. And we at CrazyLabs have been focusing on India, and I imagine that most of the viewers here already know that CrazyLabs acquired Firescore Interactive, which is an Indian studio that already published 3 games with CrazyLabs. We understand the focus of that. We understand that the potential in India is great, both on the user side and also, by the way, on the studio side. So we're seeing a lot of talented studios and bright minds coming from India. And this is why India is a great focus for us as CrazyLabs on both sides of the hyper-casual market.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So moving on, looking at the launch strategies, right? So this is something that has maybe changed over the last year or so. So initially, if you looked at hyper casual gaming, we would see that games would pretty much die after a few weeks, right? So they would spike up, die after a few weeks, and then there was a new game on the horizon for the publisher. But this has definitely changed now. So we're seeing that games are being maintained over a longer period of time, and there's a longevity involved now in this in hyper casual gaming. So tell us more about how CrazyLabs operates to make sure the longevity of the game is there.
Yeah, Tato, I think this is very interesting, and you're right. If we're looking back a few years ago, you would have seen that the hyper-casual game would go and be successful in the first few months and then drop in the charts very, very quickly. But today we know that this is totally different, that we're seeing this in the data that Tato and AppAnnie are sharing this with us. And CrazyLabs have actually seen that a while back. And this is why we at CrazyLabs created the product team, which works together with the studio once the game is ready for launch, and continue to work with the studio on the game, on the live ops, and after the launch as well. And we're seeing that this is very successful. Looking at games that were released 2 or 3 years ago by CrazyLabs, you would see that they still remain the top 100 or the top 200. And this is due to the fact that we know today that hyper-casual game can be sustained for a very long period of time. But the only way to do that is by having a publisher, a product team that is working together with the studio and consistently updating the game, A/B testing new features, adding more content, and looking at the data that you show here. For example, Phone Case or many other games that you see here on the graph. You can probably play them when they're launched and then play them 6 or 8 months later, and they might be almost completely different. You know, obviously the core mechanic and the core gameplay loop remains the same, but by working with the data and working with the game designers and product managers in order to continuously updating the game, we know that hyper-casual games can sustain for a very long period of time and even grow further after their launch. Very different than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this next slide is also kind of solidifying that point, right? So if you look at some of the biggest publishers, including CrazyLabs, in hyper-casual space, we're seeing that on average, there's 2 new titles released per month, while maybe before like 2 or 3 years ago, you would see more titles released because, you know, games are not sustained as long as they are now. But still, this shows that the importance of basically innovating and making sure you constantly have some new title that follows the trends. And I know this is also very important for CrazyLabs.
I think this is also very important for developers because, you know, if you have a game with potential and you work with the product team on adding content and continuing the test process until the game is launched and after that. But it's also very important to stay focused, because if you have something which is potential, you must work in order to make sure that you launch it as optimal as possible and obviously as fast as possible. While if you have the capacity, continue to do ideation about new concepts and new prototypes, but making sure that you remain your focus on the game which has the potential. And as we've seen in the slide before, once the game is launched, you will continue to maintain it, continue to update it, because this will be your golden goose. This will be a game that will be able to remain in the charts for a very long period of time and will be able to generate significant revenue for you and the publisher for a very long period of time.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on, here in this section, just want to kind of deep dive into what makes successful hyper-casual games, as well as looking into who plays hyper-casual games, right? So in this slide here, what we're looking at is basically an insight generator tool that we have in our platform that is powered by our Game IQ product that gives you understanding of what are the basically features that are most dominant in hyper-casual games that help to generate, most downloads and most active users, etc., right? So basically, if you're in this upward quadrant, basically these are the most dominant features, right? And if you look at the hyper-casual games, definitely, obviously, it's not a surprise. It has to be casual game in terms of monetization, it's advertising, but then obviously the rest of these is quite interesting. They when it comes to art style, it's like cartoony 3D art style that the most dominant. The portrait mode is the most dominant, and then in terms of social aspect of the games, the leaderboard seems to be driving the most engagement, right? So I think if you look at how user plays hyper-casual game, all of this kind of makes sense, right? So I know you have a few comments on that, Shai.
Yeah, I think this is very interesting, and using this tool, you can drive a lot of insights. And you can see here that the hyper-casual games are mostly dominant by advertising, and the portrait mode is something which is very important. The different art and style is something that is also very critical, as we know today that everyone plays hyper-casual games, and there's a lot of players that don't consider themselves as gamers will be able to play these games. And by following this information, you'll be able to understand what kind of art and style, what kind of content, what kind of game, if it's 2D or 3D, will be able to have better success or more potential for success.
Definitely. And then looking at basically different demographics, right? Splitting into Gen Z, millennials, and Gen X or boomers, basically. We see that hyper-casual games are extremely dominated by this Gen Z audience, which is the younger generation that gets access to the mobile devices. And yeah, so like this is quite interesting trend. Obviously, slightly different in Asian market. If you take Japan, then you see more millennials there showing up as well. But definitely, Gen Z is the target there. Any comments on your side, Shai, on this?
My question would be something that is hard to understand, if it's because hyper-casual games are targeting these players, or it's because they dominate the market. It's hard to answer that, but when you're prototyping something, it's very important to understand that you're not prototyping this hyper-casual game for you to play or your friends to play, but for a very wide variety of audience. And this is the reason you must focus your ideation part on something that is not something that you might be related to, but many other might win.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that this is the most interesting kind of slide as well, one of the most interesting slides. Here, basically, we're looking at the audience split between male and female, right? And very clearly, it's like female dominated, right? Again, slight difference in Asian market, you see in Japan or South Korea, but definitely female driven audience. And I think that caters to this non-gamers coming to mobile and playing the games, right?
Yeah, I think that you're right. And something that we at CrazyLabs have seen actually a while back, the dominant of the female audience in hyper-casual, going back more than 2 years ago. We've seen games like tie-dye and acrylic nails that came out to the market that are very female-oriented. even before we've seen this trend, we understood that this is something that is worth targeting. And we've seen many other publishers seeing this after that and continue to try and create games that appeal to the female audience. You can see High Heels and many others that we're seeing in the charts. And it's also important, going back to the slide before that, if you're not a female developer, it's still very important to understand that when you're prototyping a hyper-casual game, make sure that you understand who is the audience, who is the player. It can be female, it can be male, it can be both, but make sure you understand that this is an audience that wants to play games, who don't consider themselves as gamers, and you need to understand what will appeal to them.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree on that. Sure. Moving on into the UA strategy side. Basically, this is a quick research that we did in terms of what type of creatives are hyper-casual gaming publishers using basically to acquire users, right? And what we did is we took the top 50 hyper-casual games in H1 2021 in terms of their worldwide downloads. AppAnnie supports 16 or 17 plus different networks, all the usual suspects like Facebook, AdMob, etc. And then we analyzed over 11,000 creatives that we've collected, and basically we saw that by far the most dominant kind of creative type is the video creative, right? And then you see the banner and then industrial and playable kind of being equally split. And then if you look at the type of creative, it's all about horizontal video format for gameplay, where basically it shows the actual gameplay of the game. And I know this is extremely important for you as well, Shai, and how you guys also kind of look at different ideations as well.
Yeah, Tato, I think this is something which goes back to the basics of hyper-casual. We know that the players are non-gamers and we want to catch their attention. And this is something that we focus a lot with our studios and our partners, working on the first, most important thing: how will your video ad look like? And how will you market the game? We know today that the first few seconds are very important in order to catch the player's attention. We know that these players don't consider themselves as gamers, but we want to understand how to catch their attention. We know today also, looking at the horizontal video format, which is most common, and going back to the picture where you see the man or woman on the train holding the rail in one hand, holding their phone on the other, and this is the most natural position. And obviously, this is why horizontal is the most common one and the most successful way to also create and prototype hyper-casual hits. And this is something that a lot of developers must understand and focus on. We know that you need a very good marketing creative. We have a dedicated team that works with the studios in order to edit and find what will be the best creative and how to catch the player's attention in the first few seconds of the video. And when you're prototyping a new hyper-casual game, this is something that you need to understand. You're prototyping essentially an ad that you'll market the game with, and this will understand if the game will be a hit or not. And this is the basics of that.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think the example that you gave is exactly what people need to have in mind, right? So how do actually these gamers play those games, or what they will be doing when they see the ad, right? And if you have that in mind, you have that mindset, that's the best way to success. Cool. I think with that, basically we're gonna conclude this short kind of webinar and kind of deep dive into some of those insights. Thank you everyone who joined in to listen in. We will definitely be providing a deeper version with more insights in terms of ebook that you will be getting access to as part of this challenge that CrazyLabs is providing. And yeah, I hope you guys got a lot of insights. And I know that there's also dedicated teams that they can work with if they have additional questions. So Shai can speak more about that.
Yes, Tato, first of all, thank you very much for this information, and thank you, AppAnnie, as well. And for the developers who are watching this, you probably received the ebook, but we wanted for this webinar to give you a bit more information and insights that can help you prototype the next game. If you have any questions for us, you have a dedicated publishing manager or associate producer that can help you to answer some of these questions, and we are definitely looking forward to seeing your prototypes and games, and hopefully we'll find together the next few hits as well.
Definitely. Good luck, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.